Robert chuckled when I questioned why he created a family card just for his in-laws. He confidently stated, "They're my family, so they should have a family card, right? Got a problem with that? If you knew who took you in when you were all alone, you wouldn't say such things." His arrogant tone caught me off guard. I wondered if he was always like this. He added, "If you're grateful, do more for my family, and then I'll acknowledge you as part of the family. Until then, it's like you're on a provisional license." This concept of a provisional phase in marriage was new to me. Robert pressed on, saying I wasn't yet a formal family member. If I didn't like it, I could leave any time. For now, our family was just the five of us, and he referred to us as useless parasites. I understood his perspective, so I promptly canceled our joint credit cards and moved out. My name is Emily Welder, 27 years old, a freelance illustrator. I used to work for a big advertising agency, but went independent after marrying Robert 2 years ago. My parents died when I was young, and my maternal grandparents took me in. When I went to college, I moved back to the city center apartment where I lived with my parents. I met Robert, a handsome waiter, at an Italian restaurant where he worked. We rapidly grew closer, and soon we were called a couple, leading to a surprising marriage. I loved Robert then, quitting my job to go independent. Robert continued working at the restaurant with varying hours, making it challenging to maintain our routine. Despite this, our married life started happily. After about a year, Robert dropped a bombshell. His family wanted to visit. I agreed, even though I had minimal interaction with them during our initial meeting. I saw this as an opportunity to get to know Robert's family better. Having lost my parents at a young age, I always admired the idea of a large family. However, when his family of four arrived, I was left speechless. His 32-year-old sister, 5 years older than both Robert and me, shockingly asked, "Which room is mine?" Her rude manner contrasted sharply with the polite greeting during our first meeting. Robert's 18-year-old sister stood silently without saying a word. Despite the abrupt greetings, I showed the two sisters to the guest room and assigned Robert's parents to the room that used to be my parents' room. It was the only Japanese-style room in the apartment, and I thought it would be best for them. Once settled, Robert's older sister declared, "Since we're going to be living here together, you better start serving our family properly." Confused, I looked to Robert for help, but he was laughing in a way I had never seen before. It turned out his family had given up their own home and moved into my apartment without my knowledge. Apologizing, Robert explained that their family home had to be vacated suddenly, and they had nowhere else to go. I wished he had informed me earlier, as I had assumed it was just for a date or two. Expressing my inconvenience, Robert apologized and asked if they could stay until they found somewhere else to go. Unable to turn away the family of someone important to me, especially in their time of need, I reluctantly agreed. Reluctantly, I agreed to let Robert's family stay with the condition that they find a new place as soon as possible. However, I would come to regret this decision. From the day they moved in, Robert's family showed no restraint. All four of them did nothing and left everything to me, saying whatever they wanted. They made no effort to look for a house or a job. When I asked about their jobs, I got another surprise. Robert's older sister had quit her part-time job at a supermarket. Despite her age, she revealed she hadn't had a steady job since high school. Robert's parents had also quit their part-time jobs before coming here, and his younger sister was unemployed, lying about being a student. When I questioned why they weren't working, Robert's sister shockingly said, "Why should I work when I've become part of a wealthy family?" She claimed I had received a big settlement and insurance money from my parents' accident, and since I didn't have a mortgage on the apartment, I could live without working. I protested to Robert, but he defended his family, claiming they needed time to rest. The tyranny of Robert's family worsened. They treated me like a servant at home and demanded money when going out. I reluctantly gave them some money, which they claimed to have spent without finding a job. If I confronted them, they would accuse me of lying without proof. Robert assured me he would talk to them, but as time went on, it seemed like saying anything was pointless. However, the frequency of their requests for money gradually decreased, perhaps because Robert addressed the issue. It seemed to resolve itself, but the money I had given them was never returned. After about 3 months of living this way, I noticed something alarming. Why was the credit card bill so high? Could it be unauthorized use? Upon checking the statement, all the charges were made with family credit cards, covering purchases from food and drinks to books, games, and expensive brand bags and clothes. Each item was labeled with a number from 1 to 5, indicating that 5 family credit cards had been issued. Currently, these credit cards were in my name, with Robert using the family cards. He had mentioned that it would be more convenient to consolidate payments and asked if he could leave it to me to manage them. However, it appeared these family cards had been issued without my knowledge. Robert's family stopped asking for money because they could now make credit card payments and cash withdrawals. When I confronted Robert about why he made family cards for his in-laws without consulting me, he laughed and said, "Well, you complain when they say they have no money. What choice do I have? Besides, you know who took you in when you were all alone, right? Can you really say such things to the important family of your benefactor?" His arrogant tone stunned me into silence. I wondered if Robert was always like this. He added, "If you're grateful, you should serve my family more. Then I'll acknowledge you as family too. Until then, consider it like you're on a provisional license." This concept of a provisional phase in marriage was new to me. Noticing my silence, Robert pressed further, stating that I wasn't yet an official family member. If I didn't like it, I could leave any time. Right now, it's just the 5 of us in our family. Useless parasites. Get out. That's when I realized Robert's true nature. Shocked and feeling as if all the blood had drained from my body, I considered divorcing Robert. In fact, I began to question why I married him in the first place. Initially, I thought he was just a handsome guy like the other girls and was excited about his looks without any particular intent. Then, during one encounter, Robert approached me saying, "You seem different from other people." Emily, I don't know how to put it, mystical. Sorry, it's not something I should say to a customer. I was taken aback, but the conversation continued, and I gradually started to notice Robert. Maybe that was his strategy to make me like him. Thinking about it calmly, it started to make sense. I remember when Robert came to our table for small talk. A colleague jokingly said I was a wealthy girl living alone in a condo. It was right after that he started talking to me, probably after my wealth and this condo. Robert wasn't really my type, to put it nicely. He was modern, to put it bluntly. He seemed somewhat frivolous. I preferred mature men who could talk quietly and seriously. But despite my preferences, I ended up falling for Robert. I always found that strange. Robert was the so-called handsome guy, making it easy for him to charm a woman, especially someone like me, not used to men and newly into the workforce. I fell for his tactics and ended up marrying him. The thought made me frustrated and embarrassed. I felt like destroying everything in the house, but I wasn't foolish enough to act on that impulse. I decided to get revenge somehow. For that, I needed to endure this life a little longer. Like Robert manipulated me, I would control his entire family. The condo we live in was bought by my father with a mortgage soon after I was born. It wasn't very expensive back then, but the area developed rapidly with a new shopping center nearby, and now it's considered a luxury condo. My parents, hoping for more children, bought a spacious condo. That's why there's enough room even with Robert's family moving in. But even with its decent size, having Robert's family around is a nuisance for me. Working from home, I'm enduring this only for the sake of revenge. As Robert's sister said, there's no mortgage payment for this condo. When I was 3, both of my parents passed away in a car accident. They died on their way back from my paternal grandfather's funeral, colliding with a speeding car on the freeway. That day, I was supposed to go with them, but I had caught the flu and had a high fever. My maternal grandparents came to the condo where we lived with my parents to take care of me, leaving me as the only survivor. The mortgage payments were covered by the group credit life insurance, so the only housing costs I pay are the management fees and property taxes. Robert, seeing the amount, said he would contribute a bit more than that to our household expenses. There's no mortgage, so if I put in that much, we should manage Emily's income, right? We'll each use our own earnings for personal expenses. Sounds good, doesn't it? I agreed, thinking maybe he was right. Until then, I had been paying for everything by myself, so I thought his contribution would lighten my load. Looking back, it was foolish, but at the time, I was blinded by my love for Robert and just went along with it. Despite whatever Robert may believe, he probably thinks he's the head of the household and the one supporting me. This is likely why he can easily label me a parasite. In reality, it's quite different. I cover most of the expenses, including utilities, food, social expenses, and entertainment. Now, with 5 additional real parasites added to my household, managing with just that amount became impossible. I wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible, but I pretended not to notice and endured it. I gritted my teeth and allowed Robert's family to freely shop, reminding myself that I'll be the one laughing in the end to get through these tough times. Then, 3 months after deciding to divorce, the day to act finally came. I'm tired. Please decide. It's either me or your family, I told Robert, presenting him with a final decision. He was surprised, but I continued without concern. None of your family members lift a finger to help around the house. They just dump all their chores on me. You know I work from home. I'm not just playing around. Yet they treat me like a freeloader and tell me to know my place since you're supporting me. I've had enough, I cried as I confronted Robert. He looked at me, smirked, and said, "Then you should leave. Didn't I tell you before? You're not really a part of this family yet. Giving up like this means you didn't earn your place in the family." I pretended to be shocked as I looked at Robert. "What are you surprised about? If you can't live with my family, then you're the one who has to leave. Oh, and since I'm not at fault, I'll take this apartment as alimony, and I'll take half of your savings as part of the property division." Ah, so that was his aim all along. That's why his whole family kept harassing me, trying to drive me out. I knew it, but hearing it outright was still a shock. It was someone I once loved and even married, that thanks to this, I made up my mind. "Fine," I said, deciding to divorce Robert. "But this condo is mine, and I'm not at fault either." "What did you say the reason for the divorce is? You allowing your family to live with us without consulting me, and your family ignoring me," I said firmly to Robert. He seemed shocked that I outright rejected his proposal, not expecting such a response. It made sense, as I had always complied with his demands since our marriage. Thinking back on it made me angry. I don't want to spend another second with you all, so I'll leave now. But you should also prepare to leave. It's a joke, right? This is our home. We won't leave. Ever heard of residential rights? You can't just force people out who live here, Robert shouted. Ignoring his ranting, I left the house and went to my grandparents' place. I explained everything and asked if I could stay until things were settled. My grandparents were shocked to learn what I had gone through and scolded me for not consulting them earlier. Tears in their eyes, I said, "Grandma, Grandpa, I'm sorry for worrying you, but I'll be okay now. I might look frail, but I'm not really," with forced laughter and tears in my eyes. The day after I left the apartment, Robert contacted me right away. "Hey, what's this all about? What are you referring to, the certified mail?" I was impressed by the quick work. I had left the divorce proceedings to a lawyer, and when I told them yesterday that I was leaving the house, they arranged for everything to be delivered today. "I'm not paying any alimony, and I'm not leaving the condo, just so you know," Robert declared. "But legally, you have an obligation to pay, and you don't have the right to continue living in that apartment." I responded, "What are you talking about? That apartment is mine too since we're married. If you insist, then pay me half its value to buy me out." Such an absurd claim. Talking like this is getting us nowhere. "Please communicate through my lawyer from now on," I said, ending the call. I knew he would probably call again tomorrow, but I had no desire to talk anymore today. As expected, he called the next morning. Hey, what's this all about? He repeated the same line as yesterday, showing no creativity at all. What are you referring to? The card's not working. What did you do? What I did was cancel it. That card was mine, and you were just using the family card, remember? Indeed, before leaving the house, I had switched all the contracts from that card to another and canceled it. Of course, the family cards would stop working when I canceled mine. Yes, you paid the apartment's management fee and property taxes just for the first 2 months. It's not much, but I can deduct that from the alimony if you like. When I mocked him like that, I heard some indistinct shouting from the other end of the phone. That's right. Robert only paid the agreed amount for just 2 months. He made various excuses about the store and whatnot, always finding a reason to ask me to wait. But then he stopped paying altogether. If he forgot and thought he was still paying, that's some poor memory. But I didn't care anymore. He's someone I'm cutting ties with. His memory doesn't matter to me. That's the situation. So please pay your half of the living expenses I've been covering. I've kept a detailed household ledger, which I'll submit as evidence. Then divide the savings properly. It's marital property, he demanded. Yes, I understand. Let's split it accordingly. I agreed, and he ended the call with a parting shot, reminding me not to forget. A few days later, I got another call with the same line. I realized they lacked not only memory, but vocabulary as well. What do you mean the split of shared property? Why is it zero? You must be rolling in cash from your parents' insurance and alimony. Ah, so that's what they were thinking. I patiently explained that my savings before marriage weren't part of the shared property, and since we had no savings after marriage, it naturally amounted to zero. Don't lie to me. If you think I'm lying, why don't you consult with someone? Anyway, from now on, please communicate through my attorney. I won't be speaking to you directly anymore. Goodbye, I said, then hung up the phone and blocked Robert's number. 2 months after I left the house, Robert and his family finally moved out of the apartment. Not because they had a change of heart, but because they couldn't sustain their living. Naturally, Robert's income alone wasn't enough for a family of 5. They were used to shopping extravagantly with my card, and telling them to cut back now was impossible. I had let them use the card intentionally for this, knowing them. I was sure it would come to this. His family started pestering Robert for shopping money, and when he refused, they began stealing from his wallet. Even when Robert got mad, they blamed him for kicking me out. To top it off, the electricity, gas, and water were all shut off. Of course, I had arranged for that since I had no plans to live there for a while. Robert tried to get them restored immediately over the phone, but the house was in my name. No one else could get them reconnected. During the hot summer and early fall, his family couldn't bear the extreme heat and eventually left the condo. Where they went, I neither know nor care. Robert tried to stay till the end, but eventually gave up due to the lack of electricity and the inability to bathe. The divorce proceedings progressed faster than expected, not because Robert had a change of heart, but because he messed up. He cheated on me while we were still married, or rather, he had started making moves on someone, thinking he could kick me out soon. He bragged about owning a luxury apartment in a prime downtown location, luring young girls there. It's surprising he did this while his family was around. But he had a history of such behavior, so they didn't mind. He was handsome, so I suspected he might do such things. Before leaving, I had installed cameras in several places in the house, capturing all the evidence. Maybe he underestimated me, but he really did disrespect me. He brought his family into my home without my permission, made a family card, left me the bill, kicked me out, and cheated on me. I demanded a hefty sum in alimony for all these. When Robert saw the amount, he turned pale and desperately pleaded for reconciliation. But I had no such intentions. Knowing he couldn't pay, I made him borrow as much as possible from his company and took whatever I could get. When I threatened to sue him for fraud over the family card, he reluctantly agreed to my terms. Well, I hope he does his best to pay off his debt. The divorce is finalized, and I'm still staying at my grandparents' place. I haven't decided what to do with the apartment yet. I might sell it, I treasured it because my parents left it to me, but since they passed away when I was very young and I have no memories of them, plus all this has happened, I think they'd understand if I let it go. My work as an illustrator is picking up. I might live alone again, but it's a good time for that. I can work just fine staying at my grandparents'. I'll depend on them a little longer, then move forward with strength. Next time, I won't be fooled by a man who's only good looking. I hope to find a partner I can share my life with.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.